Okay, welcome, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are joining from. Today we are live on the LinkedIn and YouTube like every time. So missing Twitter this time. And as I said, so welcome to fourth episode of our Data Jazzers podcast. If you joined our first three episodes, you already know that we are not a standard Power BI technical podcast. We aim to provide you opportunity to get to know, I think, the best data minds working with Power BI from a little bit different perspective. Get to know them personally, chat with them about their passion for technology, their opinions on newest things around Power BI and data in general, and music, of course. Who we are? So Nicola is most known for his nickname Data Mozart, which he uses for his blogs about Power BI and everything. And he's usually trying to provide you with the great music from his data compositions. Me, Augustin, you probably know me the most from Stuttgart Power Platform user group. We are one of the most visited user groups out there, and I think the only user group worldwide providing great sessions on a weekly basis. In the meantime, I lead the Power BI Center of Excellence and Analytics Center of Excellence for the largest Amazon aggregator, Trazio. And I would say that's more than enough from us. So if you don't know us, reach out, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever. But today's guest, we have another great guest with us. Dutch data dude. I think that's the best explanation, and lots of people know it. So, Jeroen ter Heerdt, welcome. Jay is a program manager at Microsoft, working in Redmond, sitting in Redmond. We just figured out that he cannot leave US for a while. So, if you need him, reach out on Twitter. Jay, welcome, and we are really glad to have you here with us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Great. Thanks for joining. Thanks for your time and spending your morning and first morning coffee with us, with Data Jazzers.
Yeah, exactly. It's my first morning coffee here. It's just 9 a.m. I'm ready. This is a great way to start. Can we do this more often?
Sure. Sure. So, okay.
You can have a weekly coffee.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, why not? Probably at some point my boss will start complaining, but let's see. Let's see how long we can push it.
We can put it at what's new in Redmond. Hot news from Redmond.
Yeah,
weekly stand up.
I almost imagine like a microphone and like some kind of weird headset, and then like a roaming reporter on the halls here. Let's not do that. Maybe that's a bit pushing it, but let's see.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start. First, let me ask you: is it Jeroen or Jeroen?
It is Jeroen.
Oh, then
so it's
Jay.
neither. That's why I call myself Jay.
Okay. So Jay, yes, as Augustin already mentioned, that we are talking with our guests about technology, but not just from, let's say, pure Power BI perspective, but we are more interesting to hear to get a general picture of our guests, and so our audience also can understand this. I've heard, I don't know if that's true or not. You will tell us that you are a home automation addict. Is that true? And if yes, to which extent?
Well, the rumors are true. And it started like everybody else, like with like a couple of like those small smart lights, right? In my case, the Philips Hue, the light bulbs that you can change the color on. That's what it started with. But it has now grown into I think maybe 80 devices or so by now. All the 80, all the plugs, all the switches, sensors everywhere for temperature, humidity, etc. Light outside. I made my own weather station from scratch, just because I can. Also, I automated my own garage doors so that you couldn't control them remotely, and I made that happen without replacing the garage doors themselves by hacking them a little bit. What else? I have written software to optimize irrigation for lawns, so to know exactly how much water to add to your grass every day or every couple of days. Do I need to continue?
So Power BI is like a hobby to you. You're working on
Yes.
more
Well,
serious stuff.
data is a hobby to me. Like
Okay.
being able to collect data on anything is just something that's really interesting to me. So when I was still in the Netherlands, I used to have a Raspberry Pi in my car, so I would know the GPS location of my car, the speed at which it was traveling, where it was going, how many bumps it had. So it would tell me things about my driving style, so I could optimize, for example, fuel efficiency. That's just something that I did on a live dashboard in Power BI and try to learn myself how to be a better driver. It's just, I'm just very interested in collecting data about all of aspects in my life. And yeah, now
Where
home
do
automation
you
is
store
definitely,
all this data? Where do you store all this data? Is it Amazon Web Services or?
it is like everywhere. So I have like my home automation system that I use where I push all this data in is local. And it sounds a bit weird, but I want to keep everything private. I don't want to share my data out, right? So for me, the data that I collect about my life or the people in my life or how I work, how I operate in my life, how I drive my car, where my car is, etc. That's not public information. It's my data, right? So for me, the only logical choice is to store that locally. So it all goes into, and that's where I'll put a famous, shameless plug for Home Assistant, which is an open source home automation platform. If you haven't tried it, check it out. It's pretty awesome. It just runs on a Raspberry Pi at home, and you can connect anything with it. And if you start digging into that community, you'll find a couple of blog posts under my name as well as software that I've written for it. Yeah, it's really cool.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
With all that automation, how much time did you spend actually? I'm interested because I'm struggling at home connecting, interacting between, I don't know, 10, 15 home automation things. But how did you manage to connect 80 of those? And was it painful?
That's the beauty of Home Assistant. So Home Assistant in itself can talk to anybody. So think of it as a hub and spoke. So basically you have, I don't know, you might have Alexa, or you might have Philips Hue, you might have cheap Chinese sensors, you might have whatever, right? Google Maps. Home Assistant can talk to all of those. And as a result, it can make all of them talk to each other. So it's just basically the brain in the middle, right? So you can have your temperature sensor from China say, hey, it's cold. That tells that to Home Assistant, and Home Assistant can tell to your climate machine, to your thermostat, hey, you need to warm up the house, right? Just because Home Assistant can talk to both, you can put that logic into that brain in the middle. So if I wasn't working on Power BI, I would probably try to work on Home Assistant. I'm that excited about it.
Yeah. When you explain it like this, I think like when we finish this stream, I'm go outside and make this in an hour. But I guess it's much more time consuming.
It's a hobby that you sink a lot of time in, but I love it. I love the fact that you can just link anything to anything. So now any smart device that enters my home, the only requirement is, does it have an API that you can talk to with Home Assistant? And if so, I'm happy and I can make it work. And for example, just yesterday, I spent time on trying to, and this is really nerdy, trying to decode the infrared signal from one of those little push remotes for an electric heater that I have in my office, which is turning my shed, which is turning into an office. I have an electric heater there with like one of those IR remotes. I don't want to do that manually, because then when I start my day, when I work from home, it's still cold. So what I want to do is I want to tell Home Assistant, hey, I'm still home at 8:15, which means I haven't left for the office. So you should start warming my office in the shed, right? So I need to decode the remote so Home Assistant can send the remote signals through that remote to that heater. That's what I did yesterday evening, for example.
Oh, nice.
That's a nice evening.
Nice.
And when you were mentioning Power BI, so how do you describe your Power BI journey from your beginning till where you are now?
Well, I mean, I've been with Microsoft for almost 15 years. So believe it or not, Microsoft is my first employer ever. And I jumped on the Power BI train as soon as it existed, which was in the time that we still called it Project Gemini for Power Pivot and Project Crescent for Power Review. And we had what we called, I'm not sure, Data Explorer, I think it was called. And it also had a project name. I'm not sure what the project name was, but it was all in Excel, right? And I was always interested in BI and analytics. That's what my work is. That's what I've always done. Of course, we have SQL Server, reporting services, analysis services, integration services, all of that good stuff when nothing else existed. And then at some point, Microsoft figured out there was something like self-service BI, and we started building tools for that. And I jumped onto that immediately. And I think I'm not overdoing it if saying that I at some point was like basically the Power BI expert in the Netherlands, where I worked and where I lived. That's also where I got my name, Dutch Data Dude. Yeah, I just love Power BI. It's just, I'm just so excited to now work on it. But even working with it, when I was working with clients and building demos, and I even did a duo session with another colleague at some point where we both had heart rate monitors on, and we had a live dashboard of our heart rate presenting like on a screen while we were talking to an audience to see who was more stressed or not. And we built all of that using a couple of lines of Python code and pushing into the live dashboard in Power BI. So Power BI has been around forever in my life. And of course, now Home Assistant also pushes its data into Power BI. So now I can analyze all of the data in Power BI as well.
Yes, Sandeep asked, do you use Power Automate as well for these small projects with Home Assistant?
No.
Okay.
No, it's an interesting question, though. I don't think it integrates. So that's something that I can look at. Would be great, though, if you can integrate it. Because there's
Sandeep,
things...
maybe he knows something. Yeah, we'll check.
Yeah, maybe there's something that we can do there that can make that happen. Because one of the problems with Home Assistant is that it's really hard, for example, to get the team status, right? So when you work from home, it would be nice to have I have an on. Those classic on-air sign, like where you have in a radio studio, so red signs, music, right? There you go. I have one of those, and I turn it on automatically when Teams detects that I'm in a call. So, my wife knows, hey, don't disturb right now, which is great, but it doesn't work 100%. So maybe there's something we can do with Power Automate there, actually, to make that happen.
I like the idea. I like the idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so now as we switched a little bit to Power BI, let's say that because we don't know how many people in our audience are beginners, intermediate users, advanced users, and what would you say from your perspective, from your understanding of Power BI and all the background and related technologies? What would be the 3 most important concepts to grasp in Power BI? Let's say one for beginners, one for intermediate, and one for advanced users.
To answer that, I will have to tell you that I own a very specific space in Power BI, right? So I joined the team in, April 2020? Calculating, yeah, April 2020. And I own the DAX and modeling space. So I'll answer what I think from my perspective on DAX and modeling, what is the right things to learn. I'm not a visualization expert. I say loads of things about pie charts, and we'll probably cover them later today. I say loads of things about pie charts, but let me be very clear. I'm not a data visualization guru.
Fair point. Yeah, no.
I mean, I hate pie charts. That's why they're there. But that's it, right? That's as far as I go.
Okay.
So that's aside. So I won't say anything about that you should learn visualization techniques, although I think they're very important. But if you just look at the modeling and DAX space, the area that I own, I think as a beginner in Power BI, we really expect you to know the basics of what a table is and what relationships between tables are and what that means. Not all the relationship types, but just the fact that you have to build some kind of data model that is not a flat table, one table, right? Not a single table data model. But actually expand it into multiple tables with relationship. I think we kind of expect, I would kind of call that a very important concept to understand in Power BI to be successful. We've seen loads and loads of customers that forget about that, go flat file only, flat table, and then open support tickets because the DAX, when they go to the next level, stops working. Well, yes, because Power BI expects you to build a more like table with relationships model. So that would be my beginner note. Understand that you would have to have a data model with tables and relationships in some shape or form. Doesn't have to be a great dimensional model, but you have to understand at least that part. Now, when you go to the intermediate level, I would say you would have to learn everybody's friend, which is called DAX, right? You would have to become a bit comfortable with functions like date add or, those kind of things. You don't have to dabble into calculate so far yet. You can still avoid it, but definitely like total year to date and stuff. That is something that that you will have to learn when you get to the intermediate level. Now, I think when you get to the advanced level, the expert level, I would absolutely expect you to understand calculate, context transition, like from row to filter context, how that works. Shouldn't have any unknowns for you. You should understand that. You should feel comfortable with that. Calc groups is something that I would expect you to do and be able to work with and learn. So yeah, if you want to grow, I think you can postpone the DAX for a little bit, build a good data model, then learn DAX, then learn calculate.
Okay, yeah, that's a great summary, I would say. Yeah, everything starts with good data model.
Just to interrupt with one, Sandeep is now asking, why is Jay raging against machine learning?
It's just a musical reference. Raging Against the Machine, right? Rage Against the Machine. It's a band. I found it funny that we could say Rage Against Machine Learning, right? Like, that's it. There's nothing else.
Nothing personal against machine learning.
Personal. It's just funny. It's like it's very funny.
Okay, cool.
Just when we had in the first 3 episodes we had Chris Webb, Phil Seamark, and Will Thompson. So in each one of them has quite a different background in the end and how they ended up where they are. How do you describe your background? Where are you coming from, and how did you came where you are now?
Well, it's pretty straightforward, actually. As I said, I've been at Microsoft forever. So in terms of job, it's not very interesting. But I did everything under the sun that you can do in Microsoft in the field. So I was a consultant. I've been technical sales. I've been doing technical evangelism, where I learned how to that I liked to speak publicly. I shared the stage with Satya at some point even. And afterwards, I joined the Power BI team. So basically, as my career, I became very vocal about products and the way products are being built and what is wrong with them and how they should be. And at some point, a dear friend of mine actually said, hey, if you're so opinionated about those products, why don't you come over here and build them yourself, right? And that's what happened. So I joined the SQL Server team for a little bit. Worked on machine learning server, if you remember that product, which then I had to kill really quickly afterwards. I worked on big data clusters.
Also killed.
For 2019, which is also killed. So I'm not sure if I have the Midas touch, which means like everything I touch turns into something.
Is Power BI next on that list, or?
I'm not trying to at all, but yeah, that is my journey. So it wasn't a great experience, to be honest, to be killing products. That's not why I was here for. I was here to make them better. And then I moved to a small town where a couple of us in the Power BI team live. I bought a house there, and of course, Microsoft has like distribution lists for everything. Like, find a hobby. You'll have people emailing each other about it at Microsoft. So I joined the distribution list for people living in that town, Duval. And next thing I know is I saw Will Thompson sending an email to that distribution list. So I sent him a note like, hey, how are you? And he said, wait, you live here now? He didn't know. And the next thing he said is like, I'm hiring in my team. And a couple of weeks later, I had this job. So, and now I'm here. I'm never leaving, if it's up to me, at least, for Power BI. So yeah, that's my story. I'm originally from the Netherlands. Have worked in the Netherlands and Western Europe and worldwide roles. and it's just a great roller coaster to live in another country, and leave everything, well, almost everything behind. And yeah, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be here and make an impact on the product, and let's see how long it lasts.
Okay, I need to go back because you mentioned that previously you were talking about what's wrong with the product. So what's wrong with Power BI, in your opinion?
Well, I don't have the book here. Do I? Well, you know the books, right? The books about DAX.
Yeah,
The fact that those books are very thick,
books that made us cry.
that's the problem.
This is the one.
Yes, exactly. It's on my nightstand, so that's why I don't have it here. But to be honest, I mean, I'm not saying DAX is wrong, but I think my personal goal, and also a goal of an engineering team that we just introduced here in the team a couple of weeks ago, is make DAX simpler. The fact that you need to read one of those books, and as you said, Nicola, that those books make you cry, there's something wrong there. DAX is awesome. It's a great programming language. It's very, very powerful. But with that power also comes a lot of complexity. And I think we can do better in making it easier for us mere mortals that maybe don't have Italian descent, like the people from the book that you just showed. I think we can do way better to make DAX as easy or easier and closer to what it originally was. Originally, DAX was introduced as an alternative to NDX, because NDX was very complicated, right? With all the curly brackets and normal braces, everybody was going, I don't know what that is about. So then we said, okay, let's introduce DAX, which actually looks a lot like Excel language. And now it has grown into something that is actually as complicated as NDX. We have the Excel syntax still, so we don't have curly brackets and stuff. That's good, but it's very complicated. So my personal goal and the goal of the engineering team that we just created is to make DAX simpler, hopefully bringing it closer to what the original intent was, to make it a language you can easily adapt and easily learn. And of course, there will always be complexities. And of course, calculate is not going away. And of course, context transition will still exist. But another way to put it, my personal goal is to fatten the donut, as we say. So the donut with a hole in the middle, imagine DAX being a donut. There is a hole in the middle. So there is a black hole where complexity is just infinite. That's where calculate lives. Right now, this donut has a very, very narrow rim. So you walk on it, but you almost immediately jump into the black hole. My goal is to make that rim bigger, so you can walk on it longer before you enter the black hole in the middle.
It's interesting hearing that, because I think it was in December I hosted a year-end session and retrospective with Matthew Roche, Melissa, Nicola was there, and Jeffrey Wang was there.
Yes.
When he explains DAX, it sounds so easy.
Yes. Absolutely. I work with him almost every day. It's amazing. He and others that invented DAX, Marius as well, I don't know if you know his name, they are literally the people that can take Notepad, type in DAX, and it will be syntactically completely correct and performant. It's beautiful. But there's only a couple of people in the world that can do that. I think the authors of the book you just showed are that people, and there are a couple more, and these two. But that's not the majority of our user base.
That's true.
So, and I want to answer that question from Christina here, which I think is a very interesting question. What's the first target in making simplifying DAX? Well, let me give you a sneak peek. If you search online to do running total Power BI, take any search engine, type in running total Power BI. The first hit you're going to get is 22 steps to getting a running total in Power BI.
From SQL BI.
It's not SQL BI, I even think, but that's fine. Doesn't matter. 22. Even if it's 10, it's still too many, right? It is running total, moving average. Those are so common business calculations. Versus first, versus previous. hey, I've got data over time. I want to have an index. I want to have an index, and I want to compare my progress against that index. It's a very typical business calculation. Those are so hard to do in Power BI. That should just
That's so true.
We should have 2 steps to getting a running total.
Looking forward to that.
So that is kind of where we're going, or where I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I know something is happening. I know something is happening, and it will be good once it's live. Hopefully, yeah. Okay, so
we're making progress.
Yeah. That's good to know. Let's move a little bit again from Power BI, and I want to ask you another question, or let's say, rumor has it that you are also making a beer at home, and your own sausages, your own meat as well. So, if you can share some recipes with the jazzers and our audience.
Everything for a barbecue.
Is that true? Yeah.
Well, yes, it's absolutely true, and the reason is, and maybe people from the US need to cover their ears now, but the food here is horrible. It's horrible. I miss good beer. Everybody here makes IPAs. I miss Belgian beers. You can't get them here, or they're hideously expensive. And like basically, the meat, I miss like the typical good quality sausages that you have in Europe. So I decided you cannot get them here. So I decided to make them. So I make my own sausage dried, and we have special like winter dishes that we eat only in winter. So we figured out like the herbs and the spices and everything. I smoke them, etc. So that's what I do. And my brother-in-law is actually an awesome beer maker. So he's a brewer. He knows, he can taste any beer, and he can tell you exactly what's in it, like all of the ingredients. So
really, like sommelier awesome for wine, so he's for beer, huh?
Yeah, exactly. He knows everything. So I learned a lot from him. I helped him when I was still in the Netherlands a little bit. I never did it myself. And then I learned a lot from him about like, hey, cleaning and how to brew beer. So I've now been brewing beer for the last 2 years or so. So far, no failures. So far, everything is good. And just figuring it out, trying to see what works and what doesn't.
I have to say, now we can make a competition. So we are waiting for when Phil Seymour comes to Europe to bring some honey. You will bring some beer.
Well, so beer now doesn't really work, right? So you have to come to me, and then I'll serve you beer. No worries.
That's also doable. So let's see.
Challenge accepted. Challenge accepted.
In each episode, Nicola, we have some other additional amazing food or homemade products. So that's good.
I'm already 120 kilos, so
I can offer you beer and smoked meats whenever you are in the area.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Challenge accepted.
That. Yeah, we appreciate it.
But looking at that, so your home automation, beer, sausages. Sandeep got a good point. Does Jay ever sleep?
Yeah, I think
in the office.
No, I get my 6-7 hours daily, nightly. Yeah, I mean it's also weekends and nights. Sausages are awesome. For example, they don't take a lot of time to make, and then they just sit there for like weeks, right? You just dry them for like 3 weeks or so you don't touch them at all. You just look at them. So yeah, as long as you time it, you then have time for other things again. And beer, the same thing. It can just stand there for 2 weeks, and then it's ready, or 3 weeks, or even longer. And you invest a day. Do I sleep? Yes, I do.
After 4 beers.
After a couple of beers, you sleep. Absolutely, you're right. Of course, with like the work at Power BI is of course very busy as well. But also, it's almost like a hobby, so it doesn't feel like work really. And then Friday nights, Saturday mornings are spent on social media. I think every night is spent on social media, actually. I find myself walking the dog in the morning and just responding on Twitter to anything that happened during my night. Yeah, it just works for me. Yes, this is
yes.
I don't watch the F1 in the morning. No, I don't. That is too early for me on a Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah. Okay, so we touched the topic related to food. So I want to ask you, what's your opinion about pies? Not implying anything, just asking for a friend.
I love pies when they're for eating. My wife has a cake business, so she makes custom cakes to order. I get a lot of that, obviously, which then I have to work to stay in shape. But I love the Dutch apple pie. I love like all of that. But you're probably not talking about pies for dinner, right?
Exactly, we are talking about this pie in the background.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, that one. Nice
Well,
colors, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, what do I say? I hate them.
Any specific reason, or just like that?
No, the problem is there is a specific reason. And the reason is, and I'm, by the way, not the only one that says that. If you go look online, you go find an article by Stefan Few. It's called Save the Pies for Dessert. He argues exactly, or I've been reading that and I agree with him. So I'm not saying that I was the original. He was the original. Just, be very clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, pie charts rely on one concept, which is angles. And you can think about a pie chart as a big clock, right? So imagine just a clock, an analog clock. If you add the hour and minutes, without the numbers around it, it would already be very hard to understand exactly what time it is, right? Based on the angle that the two things make. That's why we added the numbers, but that's not a solution. It's just a workaround. And we do the same with pie charts, right? But then we complicate the issue. We don't have 2 slices or 3 slices. No, we have 4 or 5 or 20. But the problem is it relies on those little angles, and those angles can make the difference between millions or life or death, depending on the scenario. The core issue is that we, in our brains, are not wired to understanding angles and process them correctly. We, as humans, Homo sapiens, were biologically interested in straight lines. We can very easily see if this line crosses my vertical line, like this, or not. We immediately see that. That helps us survive in like when we were attacked with predators like years and years and years ago. So this is something that works. For data visualization, to rely on horizontal and vertical lines is really good for our brain. Angles takes us processing time, and of course, if you only look at one pie chart a day, it doesn't matter at much at all. There is a little bit of weird research out there that was never repeated and never validated that actually did a test where they exposed people to pie charts and the same data in anything but pie charts. So 2 groups, they did an IQ test at the beginning and then exposed them to all of that data continuously. So one group only saw pie charts and the others only saw non-pie charts. And then it did an IQ test afterwards, and the one with no pie charts stayed the same, and the one with the pie charts actually dropped a couple points.
Oh, really? I mean, is that true, or is that?
Well, it's a research that was only attempted once. So it cannot be seen as true research, because for research to be true, it needs to be repeated at least twice. It was only repeated once. So you cannot say this was real research, because it was never cross-validated by independent group of researchers.
Yeah, but like a hint, for example.
Yeah, it could be that is actually kind of true. And if that is, that's a great reason why pie charts are not the right one to use, because you make people more stupid than they are already. Which,
okay. That was
so,
a direct statement.
So that's basically why I don't like pie charts. I don't think they're the right visualization ever. And you have so many options. Why pick the pie chart? It is angle-based, which is not good for your brain. That's a fact. Second, it takes a lot of space for the amount of data that it provides. So that's 2 reasons not to use them. You can find other visualizations that have more data density per square inch, if you want, per square centimeter on your screen, than the pie chart, and it doesn't rely on angles, which is a win-win.
Good question from Alexander regarding simplifying DAX. How close Power BI is to open AI? You just write what you want in plain words.
Yes. Well, that's an interesting question. We have experimented with that, and let's see what happens in the future, but we're not right now at some point that we feel comfortable with it. But who knows in a couple months from now. But yes, we've been looking at that. We've been experimenting with writing natural language and have DAX generated. The trick is, of course, that DAX is a very complicated language. It is not, the same answer is not always true. And there's multiple ways to getting to the same answer, which performs better in certain circumstances. So training all of that into an algorithm is really hard, because the algorithm would have to understand your data model to generate the right DAX for you. And that's the issue. So yes, we're able, like Q&A, you can just type us something and we give you a visual. You can type something, we can generate DAX for you. That's not the issue. The issue is that the right DAX for you, given your data model? So this machine that would have to convert that natural language into DAX will not only have to understand how to convert the natural language into DAX, which is the easy part, it will also have to know context about your data model, really understand that, so it can tell you, wait, out of the multiple options of DAX that I have to solve this problem, this is the right one because it will work in your scenario and it's performant. That's the core problem, because it's not like if you say, show me the total sales over time, there's only so many answers that I can give you, right? We know people like time horizontally. We know total sales is a number, so we put in a line chart. Done, right? That's what Q&A does. That's not the issue. The issue is, once we generated that DAX to do your moving average or whatever, is that the right DAX? Can we guarantee it will work wherever you drop it onto your screen into your data model? That is the problem.
Yeah, makes sense. I have a suggestion. When you are implementing this feature, the first step would be to create star schema automatically, so someone doesn't have it.
Oh, we'll see. We are still playing with it. We're still experimenting with it. I've seen things that we've been working on that get closer to this goal. And also, personally, I don't think it might be the silver bullet that everybody thinks it is, because regardless how great it is, some people will just want to write the functions themselves to be absolutely sure it's correct. So this can be a solution to help people make better use of DAX if it would actually generate the right DAX all the time and be performant as well. But it's not the only way we should be working to make DAX easier. There will be situations in which you cannot trust this and you want to write the DAX yourself. And then if you have to write this weird 20-line statement to do a running total, that's not the right way of doing it, right? So it is basically, yes, we can make it easier, but we should also make it easier when you type it yourself. Make it easier to read, make it easier to maintain, make it easier to get to that point that you can actually get business value out of your work. Because you're not here to write DAX. You're not here to enjoy yourself in complicated filter context and context switching. That's not why you're here. You set out to write DAX to solve a business problem. My goal is to make you solve that business problem quicker without having to write this convoluted DAX statement.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can all agree on that.
Hey, Cortana, here is a flat table. Make me a star schema and create measures.
Well, that's another one. That is another one. Is you actually touch upon a very important point, that people will start with some kind of data model. It can be a flat table. It can be an OLTP database. It can be an Excel file. with multiple sheets, and then we require them to build a dimensional model on top of that. Can we automate that? Can we make that easier? Can we just say, hey, give us access to your database and we'll scan it, and based on rules and AI, if it's AI, I don't think it's AI, it's just heuristics, but okay. Based on, we call it AI because that markets and brands it and people want to buy it. So great, we call it AI, but it's not. But fine, we scan your database and we propose a dimensional model that will work with Power BI for you. And then you can tweak it from there, but at least we give you a starting point. That's another interesting angle that I've been thinking about. And we've been testing and playing with in a couple of hackathons recently that actually would do that.
Sounds really interesting. And
not an announcement, by the way. So
Okay.
yes.
And when you're talking passionately about all those things in your area, what's the thing driving Jay from day, week, month, and pushing you forward each and every day?
It's the fact that I know that what I do impacts millions and millions and millions of people in the world. It sounds maybe a bit childish, but that's what it is. The fact that I can think about a problem and make it better, and thereby not only make my life easier, but millions of others' lives easier, that's awesome for me. It's like the fact that I can make that decision and say, this is a really horrible situation, let's improve it. Improve the situation, and knowing that I did that impacts millions of people across the globe. That's just magical to me. It's just magical. That's the magic of software in its fullest extent. The fact that we can do that. The fact that I can write a plan in a specification and then have a software engineer build it, because obviously I don't write software. You shouldn't trust me to write any software outside of like dabbling in some home automation. I shouldn't be writing any production type software. I write some like hackathon things, but not like actual software. But once the software engineer, who are the real heroes actually in the team, built that software, we test it, and then we know this is going to make the life easier for so many people. That's what drives me. The fact that I can help move that needle forward, even a little bit.
Yeah, especially with so popular tool such as Power BI.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The next thing I want to ask you is that you are very, as you mentioned, when you are walking with your dog, you are responding on Twitter and other social media. So you are very active on social media and answering all kinds of questions from the Power BI community. And you are also presenting on various events, user groups, and so on. But your blogging frequency seems to struggle a little bit lately. So any specific reason for this, except this one that you mentioned that you are blogging for
Beers and sausages, I know it.
For other stuff like home automation, beer, sausages, and so on. And when can we expect some new blogs on Dutch Data Dude?
I think it has died a little bit. I mean, it brought me where I want to be, right? I mean, the brand name Dutch Data Dude has been around for close to 10 years now, I think even. It has brought me what I wanted, which was here in this team. Is it still useful? Yes. Do I have the time to actually go sit down and write a good blog? No, absolutely not. And the 2 times that I did that recently, I actually wrote the blog on Dutch Data Dude as a draft, looked at it, and went like, this should actually just be in the documentation. So I pivoted. I didn't publish it on Dutch Data Dude. Instead, I copy-pasted everything into the docs.
Documentation, okay.
So, for example, I think one of the most recent ones, maybe I turned it into the blog after all, was one with case sensitivity in Power BI. That sometimes if you load data that has the same name, let's say Nicola, in a certain way of writing, like all lowercase or just the N uppercase or all uppercase, that in Power Query that shows as 3 separate things, but then AS might mash them together and show only the first one it ever came across, which is explainable if you understand enough about how the engine works, those are like the situations that I write as a blog and go like, but really this should be part of our documentation. So I had a couple moments where I just went, scratched the blog, copy pasted it into our documentation system and published the documentation. So that
Yeah,
doesn't
it's hard to to separate there. Yeah.
Yes, it is hard to separate. So I think Dutch data might turn into home automation and maybe beer and sausages at some point. But that's just about it, I think, because all of the things that are really, as long as I'm part of the product team, all of the things that are really about the product go on blog.powerbi.com, on which I blog a lot, and the monthly feature summary, for example, or our documentation. So I'm not saying that the documentation is turning into my blog. That's not what I'm trying to say. But whenever I learned something about the product, normally when I wasn't part of the product team, I would write it on my blog because I'm go like, that's my only outlet. But now I have the official blog and I have the docs where I can write stuff. And I think if it's useful for more than one person, one customer, it always goes into the docs.
Absolutely,
especially that one with the uppercase one, for example. It's like, that's a gotcha. We got a request from a customer. They didn't understand. I dived into it. I didn't understand myself either. I talked to Jeffrey, for example, on the AS engine, like, why does this work this way? And he said, well, it's because this is the code and this is how it behaves. I'm like, that explains. Okay, great. Now, what do I do with that knowledge? Let's add it into the docs so people that find it go, okay, I don't have to open a support ticket. Right?
Okay.
So that's why you're not seeing that many blogs anymore.
All those things you are mentioning, so blogs previously, documentation, your activity on Twitter and everything, it really contributes a lot to the community. What does Power BI community means to you, and why is Power BI important for product team?
I mean, the Power BI community is the best community that exists in any Microsoft product, full stop. Make no mistake. There is no other product at Microsoft that has such an active and passionate community. None. Not Xbox, not Office, not Windows, not Azure. Doesn't matter. It's Power BI. And that sets us apart because that active community has been the driver for making the right product choices in the last 6 years. Now, today, this product, Power BI, has grown so much that it is really hard to meet all the requirements of the community. I mean, that's why we have an ideas forum. That's why, yes, on that ideas forum, there are things out there that sound very simple to the community, but are very hard to do. Dark mode, anyone? Right? Why don't we have dark mode? It's because it's freaking hard to build it into the product. Will we get there? Yes, eventually, but it's not as easy as it sounds. So we, unfortunately, because of the size of the product and the amount of users and the amount of stress and push that's on there, we cannot go like we did in the first couple of years of Power BI, just build whatever the community wants. That's not what we can do anymore. But the community is a great way of testing the waters and getting constant feedback. I cannot imagine Power BI being successful without the community. And it just makes, as we were saying just before we went live to you, Nicola, and August as well, by the way, we've never met in person, but I don't feel like I don't know you, right? We've been interacting for the last 2.5 years. I don't feel like you're complete strangers to me, right? Although we've never met. And I think that's just the power of our community, is that we can be so transparent and so honest online, and sharing ideas, getting your feedback as well. It just makes the product better for all of us. So for me, the community is the best source of information about what we should be building, mixed with my own preference, our competitor analysis, our internal customers, our people from, for example, our enterprise voice program, which are not necessarily as active on Twitter, MVPs, which most of them are very active on Twitter. So that kind of like is the same group, maybe a little bit. But the community is definitely a big part of that. And I just love the fact that I can just send a form out, an Office form. I did that a while ago, I think for Download PBX. Like, hey, we want to make improvements to download PBX. What do you want us to do? Right? I'm looking at this complex problem where there's multiple facets, multiple things that we can do. There's like 20 things we can improve. What should we be doing first? I don't know. I can ask the community. And within a couple of days, I get 200 responses. Like, that's perfect.
Yeah. That's the power of community. And as you said, we all have this impression that we know each other, even though that we haven't met a lot of people in the audience. I know from social media and very close with many of them, but never met in person.
Yeah. And isn't that exciting? And the fact that we can rally around that one product,
absolutely,
it's awesome. And I'm just so glad that I can be a little part of that whole machine, and help push this product into even better heights, and even more results and more useful results for everybody. It's just, I'm just glad that I can be part of it. And it's just very exciting to me that I can help the world that way without solving world peace or providing,
global warming
everywhere. It's undoable for me. I'm just a random dude, but I can make my little dent into this world. And when I'm old and in a wheelchair, I can maybe, or whatever, I can point to something and go like, that thing that people use across the world works that way because I originally said it would work that way. And that's just a magical feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so with that magical feeling, what is the feature that you anticipate the most in this upcoming roadmap? Let's say some mid-term roadmap, not in 2-3 years, but let's say till the end of this year or maybe beginning next year. Of course, if you can share with us, if it's not under NDA.
Well, I mean, there's loads of things not on the roadmap. Let me be very clear. The roadmap, you refer to the release waves, I guess, right?
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
So I want to clarify something there because I heard people complain about it. And we're changing the process as well, but it takes a little bit. The release waves only list things that we're investing in that have a defined delivery date. So as soon as that delivery date is unknown, it's not on the release waves. Case in point, PowerPoint integration. Exciting feature. It's coming. I played with it the other day. It's coming. It was on the release waves. It was there because we had a target date. We don't have a target date because something happened internal. Doesn't matter. Now there's no target date. So that thing gets removed from release waves. So people go like, "But where is it?" It's because there's no target date. Doesn't mean that we're not building it anymore. That's the problem I have with release waves. So there's loads of things that originally were on release waves that, because of things that happen during software development, don't have a target date, get pulled from the release waves, or are not even on the release waves because we don't have a specific target date for it yet. So there's many cool things that are coming. So don't look at the release waves and go like, "Oh, this is everything that they're doing. Why are they so busy all the day?" That's not fair. I think it would even be like less than 25% of what we're actually building, and going to build and ship very soon. Now that's the release waves. The thing that I'm most excited about is finally shipping composite models for Power BI datasets and Azure and other services.
Yeah, we are all eagerly expecting this.
Or even better, what if we can also allow you to do that on SQL Server analysis services? Wouldn't that be cool?
How do you mean?
What? How do you mean? Well, today you can't. You can't do a composite model on SQL Server analysis services. What if we can allow you to do that soon?
Yeah, I would say great.
So that's something that I'm working on and I'm excited about, and I'm hoping that we can ship that feature by the end of the year. Completely, like the whole thing. Like out of preview.
Completely GA and everything.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
That's what I'm looking forward to in my area. And then there's loads of other things that I'm very, very excited about, which I cannot tell.
Okay, yeah, but I see that people are already excited with this that you mentioned.
and on levels of excitement, for me, from 1 to 10, this thing is on level 2. The other things that I have in mind that I'm referring to are on level 9.
Oof.
Like that's the difference.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm very excited about the future in the modeling and DAX space. And there's loads of very cool things coming which are not on the release waves because we don't have a definitive date. But it's all about making DAX easier. I can tell you that. And yeah, but the feature I'm looking forward to is this one. The parameters, it's another one. The field parameters that are coming up, that is very, very cool. I look at the natural language thing to DAX, kind of like, we dabbled into it. We do an experiment. I think Mo, my manager, showed it on SQL Bits, I think, in the demo.
I watched it somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it is something that, as I said in like a little earlier, it doesn't have a definitive date because it's a very hard problem. It's not that it's not exciting, but also I don't think, if we're honest, I don't think this will solve the core problem of DAX. The problem of DAX is that it's hard to write and hard to understand. If somebody written it, for you to parse that code and go like, oh yeah, I get it. I understand what's happening here. Even if that code was written by some AI feature, you would still end up with complicated code. I think that it makes it easier to write complicated code, sure. But it doesn't solve the core problem that that code is freaking complicated.
I agree.
And that's where I think we need to invest in. So that's where I'm very, very excited about that area as well.
That's good to hear. So I will cut out of this session the part with simplified DAX and post it everywhere, because I think it's the thing everybody. I think 99% of users are still struggling with DAX, and you are completely right there. And those small fraction of tiny 1%, even less, is really getting it.
Yes, and I myself am still struggling with DAX. I'm the DAX PM. I have to rely on Jeffrey and Marius, for example, to solve the real hard problems. And they know everything because they created the language. So I can just walk to them, right? Their office is right there, and say, hey, this is the issue. Can you write the DAX for me? And they will just boop, 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 and give me the DAX. Does that help me? Yes, it's solving a problem. But not everybody has Jeffrey, right? No, there's only one of those in the world. And that's also the core issue, right? The fact that you have to either read the book, which, I'm still reading the book that you held up a little while ago. And there's more books, by the way. There's great books about like data modeling and DAX. Extreme DAX is another great book, by the way, by two Dutch MVPs, which I highly recommend. But the fact that those books exist and read like something from a university that you really, really have to digest, that's the problem. And simplifying DAX is just my goal. So, and that's maybe job security. Let's see.
Yeah, probably.
Easy solution would be just to put, instead of AI engine, you put Jeffrey behind.
Well, if we had a cloning machine, and somehow, clone Jeffrey and he was okay with that, then that could be a low-tech solution. Well, not a low-tech solution because cloning is very high-tech, but that could be a solution. I don't think that's feasible. Let's try to make it easier for everybody. What's this?
Jay, can we take just a minute or two of your time? Sorry, and we will then leave you alone. Christian asks, what's your opinion on the fact that Power Query and them is not as visible as DAX when talking about Power BI in general?
Not as visible.
I mean, probably he thinks in community or something like this, it's not so exposed as, many people are using.
You need to follow Alex Powers online. He talks about Power Query and M all the time.
But he's the only one. But he's the only one. For DAX, we have like, I don't know.
Yes.
I get the same impression, honestly.
Okay. I think part of the reason is that Power Query and M have alternatives. Like, if you take a SQL source, you don't have to write the Power Query. You can just do it in SQL, and that has been around forever, right? DAX doesn't have an alternative. Once your data is in Power BI, you need to use DAX to get the calculations done. There's no other programming language that you can take. You cannot go like, oh, I know SQL. I just write the SQL statement and push it in there. No, with Power Query N, you have that option. Depending on the source, you can either use Python or you use some SQL language or you use KQL or HQL or whatever. But there are alternatives. Not saying they're better or worse, but there are alternatives. And because they've been around longer, maybe some of them like SQL, people will grab them earlier, right? We have loads of customers that just skip the whole Power Query M step and just do SQL views. And I know Alex is not happy with me saying that, but that's the reality. Now, once that SQL view is in Power BI, then you have to use DAX to do measures. There's no
other way.
You could do that DAX measure, that running total, for example. You cannot do that in SQL and still keep it performant.
Yeah.
So that's why there's more focus on DAX, because it's the only option, really.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And looking at the timing, so we spent entire hour, and when we opened the session with the statement that we should do it weekly. Morning coffee, I don't know, hello community. And I think we opened so much topics that we could do it for the rest of the year weekly. So not a bad idea, Nicola.
Yeah, no. Amazing idea. I would like to.
Sure. I mean, happy to. We can make it into something more regular.
Live from Redmond, Jay, again.
Well, then I need one of those microphones and then one of those headsets. And
abbreviations like CNN, BBC, so you will be PBI, live from PBI.
Fancy UI, that animations like a scrolling bar like you have here. I don't know. We can make something, but it shouldn't also be a J show, right? I mean, there's so many people here working on this product that most of them you don't see in the community. I mean, you only see like a couple of us because we're very passionate about interacting with the community, but the real heroes are the ones that you don't see. The architects,
Let's discover them.
That make the real magic happen. I can just write a plan and I can, talk about it and tweet about it and fine, but I'm reliant on the real heroes here that actually write the software. Those you don't see online that much. There's a couple that are on Twitter. I think 1 or 2 of the software engineers are on Twitter or other social media, but that's like only 2% or so of the people. Those are the real heroes. So it shouldn't be about me or whatever, but we can try to use that show to open up more.
Absolutely. That's a great point to conclude that we invite you and other guys from the Power BI team just to find out that there are so many amazing people in the background.
Yeah, and it's true. And I mean, you had Will. I think you had Will last time, right?
Yeah, we had Will last time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Will and I, fine. We can try to do all we want. We can make all the plans. But if we are the only ones in this building, nothing happens, right? Yeah. We write the plans, but we rely on somebody else to make them reality. And that's just the core of it. So yes, you see the PMs, fine, but keep in mind that behind all those PMs, there's at least 5 times as much actual heroes that write the software that you use every day.
Perfect.
That's a great idea. We have a plan.
Cool.
Perfect. Thanks, Jay. Thanks very much for your time, for spending an hour of your morning with the community with us. And just for everybody out there, so next month it's scheduled on YouTube with Pragati from London, and it will be, again, interesting session. And any closing words, Jay, Nicola?
Yeah, from my side, just to thank you so much, Jay. It was a pleasure to host you in Data Jazzers, and thank you so much for joining us and for your time and spending morning and sharing your opinions, not just on the product but also on your other passions.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for organizing this. I think it's awesome that we have another way of getting to know each other a little bit better, which is not always about the product. which is of course why that ties us all together. But in the end, we're all humans, and we don't only work on the product. And we have other things in our lives that we care about and are passionate about. So I'm just glad that we get to know each other a little bit better. So yeah, thanks again for having me, and keep up the good work.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You too.
Okay.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Bye, everyone.